No, I should be much. No, it's still your next people.
Okay, apologies, we had some technical difficulties that we just now have corrected so that we're not hearing that ever.
Like that, Tom. 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So Tom isn't coming back and we like
Tom is on his way. This online.
Are you able to hear everyone in the room here?
Yes.
So from then.
Yeah, so Chair, can you hear me okay? Just wanted to do a sound check.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you.
We missed you today. My septic is bigger than yours.
Okay, directors, that's 2:33. We're about to start the meeting, so I'll ask Emma to do a roll call.
Hi, everyone. Okay, Director Popov,
I'm present.
Director Davidoff,
Present, thank you.
Director Hanegraaff,
Present.
Director Weatherhead,
Present.
Alternate Director Bogle,
I'm here, thank you.
Director Zalznick,
Present.
Director Casely,
President.
Director Main, no Director Main, and Director Buller.
Yes, present.
Okay, and Director Jackman.
Just visiting, yes.
Okay, and Director Newell.
Just coming in.
Okay. So just Director Main absent at this time.
Okay, thank you for the roll call. We do have a quorum. So I'll call the meeting to order at 2:34. And starting with acknowledgement and respect of the indigenous peoples within whose traditional lands we are meeting today. And before we, well, we'll adopt the agenda and then we'll do the freedom of the floor. Motion to adopt the agenda, moved here by Director Hanegraaff. Seconder? Director Weatherhead? Anybody opposed? Any additions to the agenda that you'd like to make? Seeing none? Move seconded and carried. And we have received the minutes of January 1st, 2025. Joint Resource Recovery minutes have been received. Any comments on the minutes? Okay. We'll check that. And now I'd like a motion.
Date doesn't look right to me, January 1st, 2025.
I agree.
Yeah. Good catch.
I'm on it. Yeah, the problem is just in here or,
The actual minutes say January 7th.
yeah, that sounds more like it. So I think it's just the.
Yeah, it's just the title.
Yeah, with the correction to the title, January 7th, 2025. Is that good? Okay. Now, before we move on, motion for freedom of the floor, and currently we have East Resource Recovery Chair Director Jackman.
Yeah, and Newell is in transit. Do we have to do it again when he arrives, or can we just give them both freedom of the floor now?
They would have to be present for us to get freedom of the floor. So we'll wait till the Director Newell Chair arrives, then we'll do another motion.
So I moved that Jackman get freedom of the floor.
Okay, seconder? Okay. Anybody opposed? Carried. Now, item number 3, and I believe that's a report from Heidi Bench. Heidi, do you want to give us an overview on that? Oh, here is
Here we go.
Director Newell.
Can I move that Director will also get removed?
A seconder. Anybody opposed? Carried. I'll go both of them covered, thanks. So we're moving on to item number 3. And that's, Heidi, do you want to give us a brief overview of your committee report? And I see no, recommendation on there, so it's just for information purposes. Go ahead, Heidi.
Great, thanks, and through the chair. The intention of this report was to address various concerns expressed by directors, to promote transparency, and to support data-driven informed decision-making. The first concern is the accuracy and fairness of volume-based tipping fees collected at non-scaled transfer stations. Conversion values between weight and volume for the purpose of developing tipping fees are based on the estimated density of material. However, due to the variability in waste composition and compaction, no conversion value will ever be accurate 100% of the time. To ensure that the conversion values used are as accurate as possible, staff review these periodically. The 2024 review indicated that the current value of 0.24 tons per cubic meter that's used for mixed waste falls on the high end, but within the range used by other jurisdictions, and was reflective of actual waste densities calculated based on data collected at our non-scaled transfer stations in the West Subregion. As such, no changes to the tipping fee conversion value for mixed waste are recommended at this time. Staff recognize that as waste programs change and/or additional diversion programs are implemented, the composition and therefore density of waste will also change, and as such, review the conversion values for all materials every few years. Additionally, field supervisors are retraining site staff and auditing volume estimation methods across the RDCK this year. This will include reviewing procedures with municipal waste haulers who are estimating waste volumes as they dispose of waste after hours as well. To address concerns around financial and environmental impacts of closing the Nakusp landfill, staff have provided some high-level analyses comparing continuing operating the Nakusp landfill with closing the landfill and hauling the waste to Udashenya. Financially, it's estimated that to bring the operation of Nakusp landfill in compliance with the landfill criteria, it would cost approximately $350,000 a year more than the anticipated cost of the landfill conversion to a transfer station and hauling of this waste. Environmentally, while greenhouse gas emissions are expected to initially increase slightly with the hauling of waste to Udashenya, the reduction in emissions associated with the implementation of landfill gas management at this landfill, which is anticipated around 2033, is expected to dwarf the initial increase. Just to note, there's an error on the labels on figure 1. The light blue line should be labeled Nakusp closed, waste hauled to Udashenya, not Nakusp. The emissions reduction of 1 year of landfill gas management is expected to be significantly more than the total emissions associated with the preceding 7 to 8 years of hauling. These findings reaffirm that the closure of Nakusp landfill and the hauling of this waste to Udashenya is both more financially and environmentally responsible than continuing the operation of this landfill. Several directors have suggested that Udashenya landfill be removed from the West Subregion as a standalone service, indicating some misunderstanding of the significance of this landfill in funding resource recovery services in the West Subregion. Table 3 summarizes the 2024 tipping fee revenue and operating expenses associated with the waste disposal facilities in the West Subregion. It highlights that Udashenya landfill is the primary source of tipping fee revenue for the West Subregion, responsible for over 80% of the tipping fee revenue in Service S188. Under the current administrative structure, all of this revenue stays within the West Subregion, regardless of where the waste associated with the revenue was generated, effectively subsidizing the reliance on taxation in the West Subregion. Over the past decade, regional consolidation of operations has been moving forward as planned. However, the associated administrative consolidation has not. The current administrative structure, combined with hosting the largest regional landfill, financially favors the West Subregion over the others, contributing to the lower reliance on taxation here than in other subregions for the same resource recovery services. Under the current administrative structure, a solution would be to implement a tipping fee revenue transfer between the West and Central subregions, or alternatively, regionalization, which will be discussed further at a future workshop. And that was all. Thanks.
Is that the end of the report? Thank you. Any questions from directors? Well, good. Okay, questions or comments in the room? Director Weatherhead, go ahead.
Thank you through the chair to Heidi. I found this was a very helpful report and thank you for just how well it's laid out. I think it's it really helps in even our discussion with people to kind of help them understand. And I think the more we understand it, the better we are at you know, sort of putting people's minds to rest on unfairness and things like that. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Weatherhead. So the people that are on Zoom, I cannot access chat. So if you have a question, just raise your hand. I'm watching the screen. No further questions. Well, thank you. We've got a question in the room.
Well, sure, I'd like a comment. I guess it is a question, because Heidi mentioned that at some future date, regionalization of Udishania might be looked at. Of course, in my mind, that date might come when or if Preston begins to truck waste over the summit to Udishania. And Preston, right now, we're not sure what's gonna happen. There's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of future costs, just like at Udishania. I could even foresee a site like Preston maybe would operate seasonally, depending on volumes, because our volumes fluctuate with population and activity. And in that case, it might make sense, say, to haul waste in the winter, something like that, not clear snow at Preston, lower volumes, less worry about smell, whatever. So when we have a workshop, which was alluded to, is it going to extend to that point in time when maybe Preston will be hauling waste there? We have older data on what that might look like, either hauling to East Cooney or Udishania. I think it'd be worthwhile revisiting it, maybe not in the detail we did in the past, but at some point, I think Udishania will become the central landfill for our entire regional district. And at that time, yeah, it would make sense to be a service across the entire RD. And all of our transfer stations would then be the only regional operations that we would feed into the one landfill.
Thank you, Director Chapman. Does staff have a response to that?
Yeah, I think the next step for us in regards to the Crescent landfill is going to be seeking clear response from Ministry of Environment in regards to the liner requirement, or waiving of the liner requirement, as well as our land application for landfill expansion. Should both of that return with positive for us, positive feedback, then I think the Crescent landfill continues to be a viable site and makes sense to operate. Should any of these not happen, then I think that's the point where we would need to do more investigation and calculations.
And just further to that, if I can,
Yes.
through the chair. So we have completed the hydrogeo and liner exemption report. We presented that to committee a while ago. Heidi's just in the process right now of doing the operating permit amendment request. It's changed quite a bit since the last time. It's quite a step-by-step process. We would discuss every clause and how we want to adjust it, and this is Crescent's our oldest permit. It's not even an operating certificate yet. So there's a fair amount to update. So she's in process of that, and what they informed us is that's the avenue of getting the liner exemption accepted. And so we have to submit that liner exemption report as part of the OC update or amendment. So our intention is to get that submitted as soon as we can and see. So I don't know what their turnaround time is, but I'm hoping we'll have a feedback this year. I think Heidi's intention, Heidi's organizing the regionalization workshop. I think the intention was to discuss the whole regional district. I mean, right now, West and Central definitely have some closer ties, but I think that's a good point, is that that's something we should keep as an awareness for future configurations. Do you have anything to add to that, Heidi?
No, thanks, Amy.
Director Hanegraaff.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that bringing waste from Creston to Udishania is gonna create some real concerns around the neighborhood. Anyone who went to the tour today saw that you drive through a residential area to get to the dump. And so increasing the traffic, which is what would happen, I think we may need to look at a different approach to the dump that doesn't involve driving through a residential area, which is what's happening now. There's already all kinds of concerns around people, primarily self-haulers, not so much GFL or VCK trucks, although sometimes they like to go to Clip too. But primarily self-haulers just speeding through there, and concerns around kids on bikes and the whole 9 yards. So I would hope that if we ever get to a situation where we're looking at bringing more to Udashenya than what's already happening, we would consider options around accessing the landfill that maybe would involve not going through the residential area that we go through now.
Well, thank you, Director Hanegraaff, and maybe Manager Wolf, you want to expand on that, because we did take a look at it quite a few years ago, and it was deemed financially not feasible. But if you want to expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, at the time, we looked at the expansion to the point what we are planning right now, which is central waste and custom waste to be brought in. The closure of the Creston landfill would mean about a 4-fold increase of waste in comparison to the closure of the Cusp landfill. So landfill waste acceptance in the Cusp is around 2,000 tons. Not all of them coming to us, but total landfill volume there was 2,000 tons. In Creston, it is about 8,000 tons. So you have that factor 4. Certainly a different dimension. And I think that's something we would have to look at again. But you are correct. At the time when we did the landfill expansion plans, we did at a high level, conceptual level, look at alternatives for access to that site. And there was nothing economically feasible, let's put it that way, at the time. But it's certainly, that's more than 10 years ago, it's probably something, if that would come to fruition, something we would have to really look at and plan around. I would like to point out as well that we can meanwhile take very high level conservative steps for the traffic, i.e. We could set up these speed sensors and table boards that you see around schools and things like that, just to remind users of that facility that they are traveling way too fast through there. So things like that we could do. That maybe there's other methods to make the area safer. We certainly have talked to our commercial haulers about not accessing the facility before opening hours. So there's a few things we can do to make it a little bit more palatable for the residents in the Udashenya area, and to be not more than absolutely necessary burdened by the traffic coming through there.
Thank you. Do you have a supplement?
Yeah, just to say that I've already talked to the RCMP and Ministry of Transportation and something else. Transit. It's hard to keep up. And about those flashing signs, and we had some more speed limit signs, because a couple got knocked down, don't know by who. So yeah, anything like that is helpful. It's particularly concerning during the school year, where you have the school bus dropping kids off on Columbia Road, which is the road that you all drove down to access the landfill. So we can talk some more.
Well, thank you, Director Hanegraaff. Director Casely, I see you've got your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want clarification from Uli there. I'm not sure if I heard him correctly when he was speaking about the landfill in Creston, that you would have to apply to not be able to put a liner in to keep that landfill going, or is that not what you said? I'm not sure. If you could just clarify that for me.
That is correct. So the Crescent landfill was set up, I would say about 12 years ago already, towards the liner exemption. What they did, they particularly established procedures and operations that had very small active phase with very frequent closure of active areas. So if you would go to the Crescent landfill, it looks very different than the Cusp or the Chenier landfill. You have the vast majority of that site fully closed with geotechnical liners and fully vegetated areas. Only the active phase is always smaller than 1 hectare and receiving very frequent closures. We have landfill gas collection as well. So it is actually, from a care perspective, has been operated with a lot more effort than we operate our other sites. This has reasons that site actually was with these slopes at final elevation, which we are, and discussed that today on site. We are at the Chenier, we are not. And so we don't have the luxury to actually do closures at this point. So it's a complete different operation. When we set that up, the purpose was to minimize leachate production on that site. So with a very tight surface cover, significant expenses over the last 10 to 15 years on that site for the closure in order to work towards a future permit for operating the site without a baseliner. We are now finally at that point where with a renewal of our permit or operating permit, we are having that discussion with Ministry of Environment and getting to that key decision-making if they will allow that site to operate without a baseliner or not.
Supplemental, Director Casely?
No, it's fine. I just want clarification on it. Thank you, Uli.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions, Director Neal?
Maybe not tell Heidi, I'm not sure, but through the chair, trying to remember if we've ever had an actual explanation as to why the tipping fees cover so much of the operating expenses for the West resource. Why, like running a landfill, you'd think there's a lot of costs and you're responsible. So, but to see this graph in this format, I wonder if it's worth a report or is it a brief answer? So through the chair, I just asked staff maybe not to derail the meeting, but I wonder.
I can speak to it and then Heidi and Uli can add. So through the chair, there's kind of two reasons. One is they generate extra revenue. So there's all of the commercial loads that are too big to go to, say, a transfer station are diverted to Udashenia. So they get those direct tipping fees for loads for waste that would have been generated in Central. And that would be the biggest thing. Anything that has asbestos, as an example, also has to come to the landfill. So that's part of it, is that they get some of the material that Central would normally be getting as revenue comes directly to the landfill. The other one is we have to ship waste, and so in West there's less, like their biggest community is very close to the landfill, so they have very low transfer costs. In fact, most of the waste just arrives at the landfill. Whereas in Central, we're shipping all of our garbage over to here. And so the transport of the garbage is a high cost. I don't know if there's...
The other important component is size. So when you compare NACUSP to Otishinia, the administrative cost in Otishinia might be double what they are in NACUSP. For operating contract, for environmental monitoring, for hydrogeotechnical things. But the volumes of waste accepted between the two sites is tenfold. So the ratio of tipping fee revenue to operating cost is very different between these two sites. Creston is somewhere in between these two extremes, but it plays very much into it that a lot of the cost is fixed. Environmental monitoring programs are largely fixed and have not a whole lot to do with the amount of waste being brought to that site. Similarly, the general overhead that we as staff have, and even the operating contract. So operating contract between NACUSP and Otishinia may be 50% higher, but it takes in 10 times the waste, right? So that ratio is the biggest difference maker between these two sites.
Thank you. I see you nodding your finger, but
Yeah, well, sure, and I think, as we have the regionalization conversation, I guess we'll touch on different, because we wouldn't mind buying into Otishinia, maybe pay a little bit and join the big co-owners instead of just leasing space as we bring stuff out. Anyway, it's just a conversation.
thank you.
Following the model of the composting facility, that's what you're speaking about. Yeah.
Dr. Casely.
Yeah, well, the other part that we're not, as we speak about traffic in there, is there will be traffic from GFL, but if the construction waste or demolition waste from the cusp area doesn't go into the forest and gets trucked down to Otishinia, where it now will have to go, we are adding, that calculation is nowhere seen in any report or estimate. So there is going to be more traffic there. So we should not consider fooling ourselves that there will be other traffic besides the haulers traffic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sure.
Through the chair, we discussed this a little bit at the site tour last week, where we have done a lot of the construction or commercial waste will still be going to the NACUSP transfer station. There's asbestos can't go there, but we're looking for a way to potentially manage smaller loads there. Bigger like roll-off trucks would get routed down to Otishinia directly. But we did an assessment over the last few years of the transfer stations can accept up to 5.1 cubic meters or 2,000 kilos or 2 tons. And we looked at loads that we get at NACUSP that are over that volume. And there's actually very few. There's a few times a year that our contractor in Burton Edgewood does, and we will accommodate that waste because it's a residential service for those remote areas, and we don't want to have to direct him down to Otishinia. The other one, there was a couple of loads on occasion from some companies, and so we're looking at ways at how we can manage that material, or some of its materials that could be diverted on site for let's stockpile, for example, things like concrete or rubble or roofing tiles, if there's a way to pilot some stuff up there. But the only other one that was really an issue was waste management, and that's because they pick up garbage all the way up the valley from businesses, and then they collect. They drop it off in the NACUSP landfill, and then they turn around and pick up cardboard at similar customers on the way down. So that's another one that we will look to see how we can best accommodate, and we've been working with them on starting their collection as far up the valley as possible, so that we're not turning around. But not impacting those current contracts and businesses with an increased cost. So like for the most part, there's not going to be, most materials generated in NACUSP will still come to the NACUSP transfer station and be hauled down there in the compactors. And so NACUSP has 2 compactors. Rosebery and Slocan each have 1 compactor. we'll be using that as much as possible. And then there's a number of roll-offs for bulkier oversized materials that shouldn't go on the compactor.
Well, thank you. We have no recommendation on this report, so we'll move on to the next report, which is item number 4. And we have a recommendation, but first I'll ask Heidi to do a little overview on that, and then I'll request a mover for the recommendation for discussion. Go ahead, Heidi.
Thanks, and through the chair. While after-hours access to RDCK resource recovery facilities is generally not permitted, exceptions currently exist for the villages of New Denver, Silverton, and Slocan to dispose of municipal mixed waste at Slocan and Roseberry transfer stations. As the number of municipalities requesting after-hours access increases, so does the importance of ensuring access requirements are clear, consistent, and promote safety, as well this will help to minimize challenges to all parties. Staff have drafted a site access agreement to be executed between the RDCK and any municipalities wishing to dispose of waste at RDCK transfer stations outside of facility operating hours. The purpose of this agreement is to clearly communicate expectations and requirements, as well as ensure safety and consistency in after-hours site access across the RDCK. It's also intended to minimize potential operational impacts and hauling inefficiencies, and ensure that all parties accessing RDCK sites after hours have the necessary insurance and training to use the equipment at these sites, such as waste compactors. Most of the terms in the proposed agreement are based on already established practices for after-hours transfer station use. New terms include bin status reporting and requiring training for the use of the compactors where available, which are to be prioritized over roll-off bins to maximize hauling efficiency. Staff recommend that the board direct staff to require the execution of a site access agreement to allow after-hours waste disposal at RDCK transfer stations. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Before I move to the recommendation here, I do have a question is, once the agreement is crafted, it's going to be brought back for director approval?
Through the chair, so the draft agreement was included on there. I believe an agreement does have to be seen by the board. Lease agreements are, if you would like to see it, we can bring it back. And the intention too is that if it doesn't actually, the agreement doesn't require board approval, seeing the draft now was the intention.
So when would there be the opportunity for directors to provide their input into this agreement?
It's included in it's attached to the report today.
So
If you had-
that be at this meeting or after the meeting?
Preferably sooner than later because the intent, what brought this up is that NACUST has asked if we could accept materials off hour. And largely it was for Fridays and for some Tuesdays after long weekends, and then we're normally open on Mondays, but we're closed on Sat holidays. So they reached out and asked if they could unload on those days. We're not open those days. So I said, you can't do that because we need to cover the waste daily. In our current tipping area, the railings are fixed. So with the new tipping area, we can accommodate that, but with the compactors, we wanted to make sure there was training. So the CUSP has asked, they're yearly awaiting access. And then similarly in Roseberry, our capacity will greatly go up once we can start using the compactor. And we need to have this agreement and the training completed with the municipal staff so that they can operate the compactor, which is where we want the municipal waste to go. So the faster we can move this along, the more efficiency we'll get out of our hauling and have this service available to municipalities. So I would prefer.
Can we get a mover for the recommendation, Director Weatherhead, Director Henning? Moved, seconded, no discussion on this. And from what I understand, now would be the time to provide your comments on this agreement so staff can take a look at it and incorporate it. So any director has any comments on that draft agreement? Director Zelznik.
Through the chair, if I may.
Yeah, just before we go to you, Director Zelznik.
We would ideally be able, once this goes to board, so if there's some adjustments to be made to, that's something we can have revised and updated in the agenda for joint to board this week.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong, what I understand is directors will make comments on that draft agreement and to see if you can incorporate it and bring it back to the board for approval. Would there be an opportunity for them to, would it be at this board meeting as scheduled in May, probably the June board meeting?
Through the chair with, if we approve it, I don't think that you need to approve an agreement like this.
No, we basically recommend to the board to approve.
Yes.
So let me ask if I may, Chair. So if there's a concern, I would have hoped, and I believe Director Selznick had his hand up, that the municipalities had a chance to look at that. That's the key information, that the municipalities that are part of that agreement have seen it and agree with it. So I think it would be good to hear from the municipalities at this point if there's issues with the agreement.
Director Zelznik, go ahead.
Okay, thank you through the chair to Uli. That was one of the questions I had. The other one after hours, what about septage? I know we're talking about waste, but what about septage? If someone's got a load, can they come in after hours with permission?
Not at this point, through the chair, not at this point, but it is something we may have to look at in the future in order to properly manage these materials. We have right now in preparation to upgrades at our SAMO site, our central site, to allow for after hours disposal, but at this point, not yet.
Supplemental?
No, that was, there was two questions I had, so no, it was answered. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just getting back to the recommendation that's been moved and seconded. The recommendation does not say to present it to the board for approval.
Like I said, I'm not sure that the board needs to approve this. It's not a lease agreement, so it's there. You can provide comments. Similarly, we'll take your comments and send that to the municipalities, and they will be able to provide some comments if they would like some modifications before it's executed. So we're taking feedback, and
it's an administrative agreement, non-monetary, so I don't think there's a board component to this. But I think the important part is that, and I think Director Casely has his hand out too. The important part is that the municipalities that are signing off are comfortable, and that you here in this group don't see any concerns that in the text that is currently drafted up.
Okay, I think I've got it clear now. So we do have a recommendation on the table.
Casely has his hand up.
We do have a recommendation on the table. It's been moved, seconded. Further discussion, Director Casely, go ahead.
Yeah, all I wanted to make sure is that the staff is getting a chance, because they're the ones who are going to do it, not us sitting around this table. As long as our staff gets a chance to see it and have discussions with staff on their concerns, then I have no problem with it. It's just, I want to make sure staff actually talks to staff and all of the staff of the villages.
Yeah, so there is a draft attached, staff can review that. Is that correct?
Yes, correct, through the chair. And we've had our operations group, the contract lead, and so once it's ready, we can provide it to the municipal staff, and then they can provide any feedback or execute it on their end.
Okay, well, thank you then. I'll call for a vote. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. And anybody online in favor? 5. That's the majority. Carried. So now West Sudbury Transfer Station landfill tour recap. I'll start with Amy. May you give us a recap on that? And if anybody's got any questions on it, would you like to entertain questions as you move forward, one at a time, like Spokane Transfer Station?
Sure. Can do that. So recap a little bit for those that weren't at the tour. So Slocan, we have replaced the entire Z wall. We looked at we brought to committee a few options. One was just replacing the top few rows of lock blocks that were degrading and making it challenging to support our railings required for safety. The other option was completely rebuilding it, and the lifespan and cost difference was elected to that was the preference. So we have replaced the entire Z wall, installed a new compactor. There is an old compactor that was on site previously, and that has remained on site. We actually just got confirmation this morning that the bins are interchangeable between the old compactors and new compactors, which is great because it means that we just have to buy one swing bin, and we weren't sure if we were going to have to purchase two. The other thing we did was installed surveillance and more lighting, and we installed a septic field for the washroom there. It's also now hooked up to the village's water, so we've got water for the washroom and just for on-site dust control and washing and such, which is nice. Once the old compactor ages out, the intention right now is that we won't replace it, but if volumes or hauling efficiencies direct us otherwise, the pad is sized that we could add a second compactor there if we want to in the future. So that one similarly was just under budget. That one is being funded by reserves in comparison to the other two projects. Any comments on Roseberry?
Okay, any questions, comment? In the room, I've got Director Weatherhead, and online I've got Director Casey, so we'll start online first this time. Go ahead, Director Casey.
I was just wondering when we can look forward to having that compactor hooked up. We've been waiting since 2009, so we're pretty anxious because it'll actually really make a huge difference to the damage on our garbage truck as well as to damage to lids and stuff, or the challenge that staff has dumping in there. It's going to be so much better. If you could just enlighten me on that.
Yep, through the chair, we had to do some bin modifications to the compacting bins, and they've been, GFL has been completing those. So I suspect the other one was the getting this agreement set up so that, because we don't want off hours use of that. And then part of that was developing the safe work practice, which has gone through the final review. So I think we are very, very close to be using it. Larry's, I don't know if that's Larry Brown on the line. I don't know if he has any other updates on that, but I would say like we should be hauling from or using the compactors this month, but I can't give you an exact date unless Larry's got an update.
Did you have a supplemental, Director Casey?
Yeah, well, you kind of answered my second part because while I was there on the weekend, I noticed that the compactor bin is cable and not hook and lift, which is what GFL uses. So they have to change that over to hook and lift before they can actually start hauling it. They don't have cables anymore.
Correct. They were doing some modifications for the mounting.
Okay, well, thank you.
But one additional element we did hear yesterday or today about the compatibility of the compactor bins in Slocan. Did you want to add to
I
that?
mentioned that when you left the room.
Okay, well, moving, any more questions?
I just thank you through the chair, just the really, how noted it was that how restricted that site was size-wise with the highways setback and that came in quite far. So that was actually really good learning, seeing that and understanding the restrictions on that site. So thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you. No further questions. Moving on to Nakusp.
Yes, thank you. So Nakusp, as you saw on the tour, was a completely new transfer station. So we have the two compactor bins there or compactors there, 3 roll-offs. Again, those will be for overflow or bulky items that shouldn't go into the compactors. We expanded and moved the recycling area further away from the scale so that it could keep the traffic separate and not get so much congestion right at the tipping area. The rest of the transfer station components will largely remain as is. So the wood, yard and garden, metal, those are there. There's a new access to it so that the people can go to the different areas without too much backtracking. So that was great. That one as well came in just under budget. That one is funded by the Growing Communities Fund. There was, I think, 336,000 for the Growing Communities Fund, and the remainder was a long-term loan. And that, like I mentioned, that was a combined for Roseberry and Slocan for that loan. Yeah, we had North Mountain was the lead contractor. They had Revolution as their earthworks contractor. We had our own internal project manager there as an ongoing site inspection for all those projects. So we got to save quite a bit of money on the engineering oversight. Sperling Hansen Associates did the design and tendering and the construction oversight for us. The bins came from AtSource. And yeah, the remaining things on site were some of the bin and directional signage. We're getting the surveillance all hooked up into our system, and I think DHE's finished that. There's some surfacing that was required at Slocan, but it was in place before we arrived. There's still some hydro seeding. I think that's occurring this week on the 14th at Nakusp and Roseberry. And yeah, the last thing is that we have 4 new roll-off bins coming later this year that we'll need to once Nakusp comes online, because we need more of the rotation, and we'll get 1 more swing bin for the compactor. I think that was it. Sorry, and then in Nakusp, give an update. So the closure plan is underway. We've got the draft. We've given comments. We've met with the Sperling Hansen's doing the closure design there. So we just met with them in mid-April. Their plan had 2 concepts. One was for a geomembrane, and it was driven by no on-site low permeability soil, so a clay. We have asked them to look for other clay in the area, and there might be some leads from the Burnt and Edgewood area. So and that was the other alternative. So they did present the both of them, but there wasn't a firm cost associated with, or they were making a fairly conservative estimate for shipping the clays in. And so the geomembrane was the cheaper option. But if we can find the low permeability soil locally, then that might be the one that we'll move forward on. I think we expect the final closure plan shortly, and then that'll be submitted to the ministry for approval. And then we have a number of materials on site that we'll be able to use for the interim cover, some of the chip wood that's on site, and then the closure works for the Nakusp site. It's budgeted in 26, but and I think we've got 1.4 million in there. The preliminary estimate for the more expensive for the geomembrane layer is 1.44. So if we can find the clay at less, so essentially we're expecting to come fairly close to budget though. There might be some adjustments for the next year's financial plan. So, and right now the target is to close in 2026. However, we do want some time for settlement and approval of the ministry's approval of our plan. So it might be looking more like a 2027 closure, especially to make sure that we have all the tendering done at a time where it's more likely to get lower price for the construction for us. So, and that 2027 timeline has been supported by Sperling Hansen. So.
Okay, thank you. Director Zeldin, you had a question possibly on Roseberry that I missed?
Oh, yeah, I can go back to Roseberry if you got a minute. Just where they were dumping the brush mostly, is there more room in the back? If you pushed it further back, is there more room? And everything that, all the brush and debris comes to Nakusp to be ground up, is that correct?
That's correct. The material, currently the wood and metal and yard and garden go up to Nakusp, and I think we would keep that, especially until full landfill closure, because we will not only have interim closure needs, but we'll have final closure needs for the topsoil mix. And we've asked for pricing in that contract to haul material from Roseberry to Nakusp and then have the hauling from Nakusp come down. So to try and have a bit of backhauling opportunity there. Your comment about, or your question about pushing it to the back, you're speaking about Roseberry in specific?
Yes, through the chair to staff.
We don't have a lot more space than what we have, and the septic field is at that end of the property as well. So we don't want the equipment like the bigger trucks to be driving on that. I don't know if I know exactly where you're speaking about, but we don't intend to stockpile material, the yard and garden on site any longer. So that it's not an ideal location to have large stockpiles or have the chipper come in.
Yeah. Okay. So can I carry on through the chair?
Okay, so, Nakusp, any questions on Nakusp? Director Zelzner.
Yeah, through the chair to staff. First, I want to thank you for the design of the recycling area. It's what it was before. There was no room to get in there. You couldn't turn around with a trailer. You've expanded it really, really well. I just want to thank you for that. The question I've got is, when do you expect the landfill to close, and to start using the transfer station? And can the word get out there to the people, and especially to a lot of people don't have social media, and when they're going to come out there, it's going to be massive confusion. And for some of them, they're going to have loads that they didn't understand. Are you going to have more staff there, or how are you going to handle the communication part?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, through the chair. So we do intend to start using the new tipping area quite soon. We are waiting for to get outside of the snow because we didn't have snow removal as part of the current contract. The operating contractor is on board for starting with the new transfer area soon. We need to swap one of the bins. The lid hinges need to be swapped, and we need to move the waste spotter shed over to the new area. It's all plug and play, ready to go. So we expect to be able to do both of those things between some closed days, so that we're open, so likely on a Thursday, Friday, and then be ready for the Saturday operations in the new location. We will have all this directional signage that we didn't have in place when you came to the site. The waste spotter will be there. And yeah, I think for the initial transition, we'll probably try and have some additional staff on site, even if it's the lead hand and the site, the field supervisor providing some assistance. And then, yeah, we can provide some communications. Most of the public use the tipping area, so it'll just be using a new tipping area. I think we expect that transition will be happening in the next few weeks. We won't be using the compactor bins until we at that site until we start moving waste down to Nakusp. And so with our current fill, the expectation was a mid-summer we'd reach our capacity, but we're going to continue filling until we get all of the cells filled that our fill to closure plan directs us, and that's dependent on volumes. But with current projections, that was late July, early August expectation.
Supplemental?
No, thanks through the staff, through the directors, through staff. Thank you, Amy. One other question. say something crashes there, it fails. And it sounded like you were gonna leave the landfill open for a while yet, in case things don't work out right off the bat. And I know also you said, right now it's still certified and we don't know how long it'll operate, but there is an opportunity if, even in Oceania where you can't operate anymore, we get too full, we would have to put in a new liner and different other options, but that's still on the table for the future, from what I understood. Thank you.
Thank you. So, any further questions? Not online, not in the room?
Sorry, I wouldn't, if we can, would like to clarify that. So if that came from the tour across a long way about maintaining the operating permit of that site, we actually do not intend to do that. And even in Central, where we had the same intent for a while, because of cost, we are thinking about closing the permit for the disposal end on this. If there's ever an intent of having a landfill, a need for a landfill site, there is the remote chance of reapplying for a permit, but we are not holding the permit open because that would mean that all the administrative needs and costs for monitoring a site would need to be kept up at significant cost. So if I brought that across wrong at the site meeting, my apologies.
Okay,
Thank you.
Yeah, I understood that's what you said at the site too.
Yeah.
So there was no misunderstanding from my point of view. Okay, so we're done with the class. Now we're Oceania. Today's level 2.
Yes. So as Nathan described, the works there are, there's a number of things underway at the same time, essentially. So we've been working through getting a design operation enclosure plan update that supports our intended optimized footprint. That launched us, and there's some additional lands that we're looking to support that full capacity of the optimized footprint, which triggered us to complete some archaeological assessments. And we've already been through the first few stages of it. This last remaining stage is the archaeological impact assessment, and we'll need that to determine our landfill expansion plans and the landfill footprint design. We're awaiting confirmation on our heritage permit. We expect it within the next few months. It was applied for it back in August last year. And we already have a contractor ready to begin as soon as the permit is issued. So we have the optimized footprint that was approved through the board and added to our resource recovery plan as our intention for development at that site. We just actually had our kickoff meeting with Sperling Hansen on April 17th with staff, talked about our interim fill plan, which is going to be the focus of the near term to make sure that we're filling in spots that sort of work the best for our next few years. The other thing that will start off is the preliminary transfer station design. As mentioned, we're looking to install a second scale, an outbound scale, possibly a commercial traffic lane, and a new tipping area with larger bins, and some restructuring of where we add all our diversion materials. So that work has already begun. They're also going to support us with our lands expansion application and update the design operation enclosure plan with all of these things. And that's a design operation enclosure permit are required by federal operating certificates, and they're accepted, and they're part of our authorizations from the province on how to operate the site. And the current timeline is to get all of that work completed by the end of this year. And it's really just would like to support it. One of the biggest things is their political process and the lands process. Essentially, what we're going to do is make the design to the optimized footprint, and then if it's not accepted, then we'll go back and do a modification to it. And most of it would remain the same. It would just be some of the slopes on the south there that we'd have to adjust. So in considering the tight timelines, we had a thorough discussion with Sterling Hansen about this, and they felt like it would be important to start moving all of this forward. And so we will have some multiple transfer station concept designs to the committee in probably Q3. And we also spoke about the fence relocation. So right now it's right at the edge of the fill area, and we would like to move it up and give us more space, and both for filling and for borrow and a number of things, but we really want to try and make sure that we move it once. So that's something we're looking to advance as soon as possible. It is in budget, I believe in 2026 for the fence and road relocation. The license of occupation, so following the archaeological and the DOCP, we will develop a new management plan and stakeholder engagement plan, and to support the license of occupation expansion application. What we're looking to do is expand to the south by approximately 100 meters. That's to support that slope regrading and fence move and make sure that we have the vegetative buffer. Like I mentioned on site, the landfilling activities or the waste placement won't be expanding beyond our current approved permit area. So we'll be doing the First Nations and public engagement for the DOCP and the lens expansion in early 2026. We've already started some of those initial communications with First Nations. We also talked quite a bit about the septic and how to stop there, that we have very high volumes, and the resource recovery plan approach was to partner. We did an assessment and we looked at a variety of options, and the winning option was to partner with municipalities. We were somewhat underway with design ideas with the city of Castlegar, with their North Lagoon, and they determined that they needed to go through like a waste management plan update. And so right now we're waiting on that. As Lee mentioned, we've got staff on their advisory committee as well as City of Nelson, and we're in contact with both McCusker and Selma too, looking at all the options to our thought is that managing liquid waste at a liquid waste facility that's already permitted under those facilities is the best way to go. Alternatively, is the regional district has to go through that liquid waste management plan process, which is a multi-year and fairly expensive process, and then create our own facility. So obviously, there's good reason to partner with municipalities that are in that business. I think
you've covered most of it. And a lot of it, the landfill. Thank you, Amy. So, did anybody have any questions? I mean, we were on tour. Everybody here at the table were on tour. We've heard this before. So, anybody online have any questions? See no questions. We will go to public time.
No, sorry, I have a question.
And who? Can you identify yourself? I can't see on the screen.
Okay, my name is Shirley. I have the picture.
Okay, so can I just stop you for a second? This is a meeting for the directors, and I'm asking directors for any questions.
Okay.
Now I'm going to move on to public time. My understanding, you're a member of the public.
Correct.
And now you can ask your question in public time.
Now I can go?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so we've heard that the Otashania landfill site is going to be used to dispose of 400 ostriches soon, weighing over 63 tons. And we are all very concerned about this. I mean, the eyes of the world are on the RDCK. There's thousands of people from communities across Canada and all over the world who have voiced deep concern and support for saving these ostriches from unnecessary slaughter. Both the ostrich farm and the proposal burial site fall within the RDCK's jurisdiction, and this places the responsibility squarely in the hands of the RDCK. These birds have shown no signs of illness since January, yet plans are underway to kill and dump them in the Otashania landfill site. Is the RDCK going to investigate any of this? Because it can't go both ways. If the birds are healthy, they should be spared. And if they are sick, they have to be treated as hazardous waste and not just quietly buried in a community landfill. I mean, if these birds are sick, as the CFIA seems to believe, we're concerned about this 63 tons of contaminated waste going into the landfill like that. Thank you.
Okay, so your question is?
Is the RDCK planning on investigating any of this, or has this been accepted?
You want to respond?
So I'm not sure what you mean by investigating. Where we are right now is that we have received end of last year, have been approached by the federal institutions dealing with this about potential disposal of the materials. They have since set up an account with the regional district for potential disposal. And they have advised us that once this is through the courts, they will let us know if a disposal of these birds is required or if other measures are taken. So that's where we are right now. We are the responsible agency for waste management for our regional district or for our area. Regional district has obligations for waste management. That's what we are mandated to do as a regional district. So we have nothing to do. We don't have the capability to assess what the right approach is to deal with these birds. We do not have any information that allows us to assess what the appropriate process is. So we need to leave this from our side up to the experts. We are responsible to assist federal and provincial level in managing any outbreaks. And that's what we have done to date in the communication that we had with them. We have not received any confirmation in regards that the birds actually are coming to our site or sites. And there's a lot of information floating around about us already preparing for it, digging holes and whatever. So there's a lot of rumors and false information out there that is not the case.
So in short, we have not been approached to accommodate the disposal of the ostriches in our landfill site, period. Until the court cases are over, then, and we get the order that we have to, then we will address that issue at that time. Hopefully
And
that
you
answers
have,
your question.
well, do you have to accept them? Can you not just say, find somewhere else?
Not at this point, we can't, because we don't have an order to accept them. Until we do, and then we will determine what our response is going to be. So
Okay,
thank you for your question.
thank
And
you.
we have to move on. Any more public that want to ask a question? Seeing no further questions, I thank you for your questions. Hopefully I answered your question. Until we have an order,